Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to my reflection on my infographic. So I created my infographic on the way I use my MacBook and what I use it for. And at first I chose to use rescue time, as you see open here, so that I can track the way that I use my computer. And from there, and at first it was a backup method for this project, but then in the end I just realized that I did like it and I did want to track the way I do use my MacBook, since it is important to me where and how I spend my time. So the first step I took was using Venngage, one of the tools that was on our class's site. And I used Venngage, and right away I found a template that I liked. And I knew that I wanted to use the title I Track iTime because of the relatability to Apple products, since I am using a MacBook to track the time I use on the computer. So from there I just did some simple stuff. I filled in the bubbles with different numbers for the most used items, such as Mozilla Firefox and Microsoft Word, so to the less used items like mail. And then some activities as well as productivity. And this was the first one I put on Flickr, and by some of the comments I knew that I wanted to change the way that I used color, and I also knew that it just didn't make sense and it was too simple, and it didn't pop out of the on. So then I went to the next step and I learned about vectors in class, so I googled some and found some great ideas. And here's one of a MacBook Pro outline, and I downloaded it and cut it out and put it onto Photoshop. And from the same site I was able to find a background that I really liked that was pixelated and very colorful, so I chose this one and I put them into Photoshop. And from there I jumped to use some different ideas from Color Scheme Designer, again from our class website. And from this background I chose some of the colors here and over there, and I put it into here, and I did an analogic idea for the colors, and I went from there. And this was the result. And I really did like the way that it was set up. I liked having the browsers and Microsoft Word and Entertainment in the different way I use my MacBook here. But as you can see, it's hard to read the words, and I knew that from the beginning, as well as it's hard to read the words here, but I was just obsessed with this pixelated background. The next step I took on my infographic was adding two new ideas to the screen. So what I added was a taskbar right here, as well as the most productive days of my calendar in October. And so I noticed that this was a bit confusing because 4+ hours of production, what does this mean? 10/2, 10/3? It's a little confusing, so I did change that in the next version. And I did add a drop-down box over here for most visited, and I did change that. And so right now I'm going to show you that version, and so this is actually the final version I came up with, but it took a while to get there. So as you can see here on my Photoshop, this is what it was, my almost final, as I called it, right there. And I changed it a little bit because I realized it was very difficult to see the taskbar as well as see this drop down box in the words, and I did change the wording so that you can read it in the little boxes and the circles, but I noticed it wasn't making enough sense, and especially because there's two screens. There's this screen over here and then this screen, and as I mentioned earlier, I did really enjoy this pixelated background, and I think that hindered my judgment a bit because once I get attached to something, as I saw in the last project for this class, it's hard for me to let it go. And that's something I learned again in this project, is that if something isn't working, I should move on and I should change it to make sure that it is a cohesive project that makes sense. So the next version was this, and this is the final version. And what I did is I blew up the MacBook Pro screen, oh, excuse me, sorry about that, and I kept everything else, but I altered this a little bit, and I changed this, changed the colors, changed the different opacity, and what I did add in the last version was this right here, which is the top half of my Mozilla taskbar, and I included rescue time, which you already know I use to track this, as well as Flickr and just some fun other links of social media that I use sometimes. And as most of us did, I did struggle a lot with this project, and it was hard for me to let go of some ideas that I truly loved, but then I noticed that I could include them somewhere else, just like this pixelated background and the MacBook Pro outline, which I added my own little details like the Mac Pro Word, as well as this little light sleep wake light right here. And I really enjoyed doing this project because I did learn my weaknesses, which are that I don't want to let go, and I get a little confused about what I'm trying to convey, like this one, a screen within a screen. But I did like that I did come up with this in the end. So thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my reflection. Thank you. Bye.